Imagine having a loyal group of customers who not only buy from you, but actively promote your brand, defend it, and engage with it daily. That's the power of brand community. Today, we're diving into how to build and nurture a strong community around your brand, why it matters, and the real world strategies that can turn casual customers into passionate brand advocates. Think about the brands that you love. What makes you feel connected to them? We're going to explore how you can create that same connection for your own business today. Today, we've got season 2, episode 20, where we're talking about how to build a community around your brand. Now, we're going to talk a couple different things about in this episode. We're going to talk about what a brand community is and why it matters, the psychology of belonging, why people crave community, the types of brand communities and which one might work for you, step-by-step guide to building an engaged community, real life examples of successful brand communities, and common mistakes brands make and how to avoid them. So, first off, defining what brand community is and why it matters. We see brand community, it's not just an audience, it's a customer base. It's a group of like minded people who engage with each other and the brand in a meaningful way. So, it's more than just selling products. It's about fostering connections, shared experiences, and a sense of belonging. Now, when we look at the actual impact of a strong community, we've actually seen that customers in brand communities actually spend 19% more than those who aren't engaged. And what's really fascinating is a loyal brand community can actually significantly reduce marketing costs through word of mouth referrals because you can shift your budget from paid, more money from paid advertising towards referrals, which obviously don't cost anything unless you're incentivizing them. So, for an example here, we've seen Harley Davidson. They actually revived their struggling business. And the reason they did it, or the way that they were able to do it, was they were able to foster a strong community around its brand, which was creating loyalty that goes beyond motorcycles, which was really fascinating. Now, when we talk about the psychology of belonging and why people crave community, we know there's three aspects to this, right? So the first aspect is the human need for connection. People just don't buy products; they buy identity and belonging. And we know that shared interests and values create an emotional bond between customers and brands, which is a really fascinating and important statistic. Now, when we look at the second piece of the psychology of belonging, we know that there's the role of identity and brand loyalty. So consumers want to associate with brands that not only align with their values, but also their lifestyles. So if we think about this from an example standpoint, we've seen that Peloton has actually done an incredible job of building a massive community, not just around fitness, but around motivation, connection, and shared progress. And like we've discussed in previous episodes, when we look at Peloton, they've done an incredible job of going into different verticals, such as, I believe, yoga, other fitness than just the biking. Obviously, they started as just kind of that bike company, but they've transitioned into essentially a full workout platform outside of just the bike. Now, the third element of the psychology of belonging, why people crave community, we see the power of exclusivity, right? So we've talked about this in previous episodes. We've talked about VIP groups, early access, but we know that people love feeling like they're part of something exclusive, right? So when we talk about the VIP groups, the early access or insider perks, it helps strengthen that bond with the consumer. And so, for example, Nike rolled out the SNKRS app, sneakers for short, where they created exclusivity around limited time shoe drops, fueling brand hype and community engagement. Obviously, this played into a really big aspect of building a brand awareness and brand loyalists that were centered around sneakers. Really great brand. Now, when we look at brand communities and finding the right one for you, there's three different examples that we want to provide slash give you direction to, right? So there is the online community side where there are social media groups. So what you could do here is Facebook group, LinkedIn groups, Reddit threads, or Reddit forums, where you can essentially build communities centered around your brand, whether it's like a VIP group. You can have multiple groups here. So you could do something along the lines of just a generalized buying group and then VIP members and exclusive members, whatever that looks like. But then the second piece you can do within this is branded forums. So I know Glossier did into the Gloss blog where, a skincare brand essentially took their own type of branded forum where you can ask questions, they can give insights. And then the last piece of this could be some sort of private membership. So we've seen this as mastermind groups, Patreon exclusive content, anything along that nature where you're either providing some sort of incentive where not many people can actually get into the group unless they fit your criteria. So obviously that private membership plays into that role. Now, the second type of brand community that you can build is some sort of brand in-person community. So whether that looks like meetups and events, and that can look everything from conferences, workshops, fitness classes. We've seen some really fascinating collaborations between fitness brands putting on some sort of fitness class in addition to some wellness event where they've brought in a couple different brands, collaborated, made a really great event. Same thing with workshops. We've seen some really great businesses that have come in, put in workshops, develop some sort of incentive for their prospects to come in and build that relationship in person with them. Now, the second piece to this, depending on your budget, is brand owned spaces. Now, I think this is a really fascinating concept that's going to continue to grow, especially as businesses look at reducing their overall retail footprint and go into more brand owned spaces. So when we think about it, the two that come to mind for me are the Lululemon community hubs and the Apple stores that act as essentially engagement spaces. The easiest one to identify and talk through here is the Apple side, where if you walk into an Apple store, they're not just selling you things. At the end of the day, several times that I've walked through the Apple store, they're putting on some sort of class on how to best use an iPhone, an iPad, different photography classes. There's some really interesting things as you dive deeper. You think an Apple store is just to sell products, but it's actually essentially an experience piece as well. So if you haven't looked at Apple or see what they're doing in store, it's a really fascinating thing that they're doing and providing a much better experience for their retail shoppers. Obviously, it probably drives retail traffic, but at the end of the day, they're helping their individuals use their products better. Now, the third piece of this is the hybrid community element. So some brands, or some more brands than others, are starting to use this, where they're using a mix of online and offline communities to maximize their engagement. So, for example, here, Starbucks blends online engagement, which would be their Starbucks reward app. They have different ways to communicate with you, but then they're actually offering in-store experiences and local events, which drive that hybrid community element of it. So you might be wondering, how do I build a thriving brand community, but step by step, right? So for perspective, step one is going to be, we need to define your purpose and core values. So why should people care about being in a brand community? What do they gain from being part of your brand community? Those are the first two questions that you need to ask yourself. You need to make your community about a bigger mission, not just your product. And you can use Patagonia for perspective when you're thinking through this. They've done an incredible job of building a community around environmental activism, aligning with its audience's values. Now, step two is you're going to need to choose the right platform. You don't have to be specific to one platform, but it helps to build what platforms you want to start with, what platforms you want to grow with, and kind of put together an extensive plan from that front. From our perspective, you need to go where your audience already is, whether that's Instagram, Discord, Reddit, Facebook, YouTube. Again, there's no perfect situation here. You just need to make sure you're where your audience is. Now, if your audience isn't there, you need to consider creating a space where they can actually connect. So whether that be a forum, private group, these things are all important. Now, the third step is going to be encouraging interaction and user-generated content. A community isn't just about your brand talking, it's about consumers engaging with each other. So you need to encourage user-generated content, discussions, organic conversations. And the easiest example here is Lego's Lego Idea platform. What it does is it lets users submit new product ideas, which obviously strengthens engagement across their entire customer base. Now, step four is reward and recognize your community members. So people stay in communities where they feel valued. So you need to make sure that you create a loyalty program, give shout outs, or offer exclusive perks that make someone feel a little bit more special than just being a part of your community. Now, the example here is Sephora's Beauty Insider program does a really great job of making their customers feel like VIPs. We track lots of different loyalty programs. From a consistency element, we see some really great positive things that come out of that program, with a lot of users feeling like they're actual VIPs, they're special, which are really great. Now, the last step here, step five, is staying consistent and keeping the momentum going. So a brand community isn't just a one and done effort. It's going to require consistent engagement, new content, and ongoing interaction. So where we recommend is if you're starting it, you don't have a lot of resources to have someone to manage it. You need to make sure that you have a content calendar for community engagement, live sessions, Q&A sessions, maybe special events. But if you do have the budget, we highly recommend looking at either hiring someone to handle this for you or hire a full-time employee just to help you build the community element. Because specifically in social media, obviously the social media manager role has become something that's been a little bit more extensive. But what's really fascinating is within that role, there's been some more individuals that work on copy and posting things, and then more of community awareness within social media. So there's a lot of opportunities there, depending on your budget, depending on your resources available to you, of ways that you can stay consistent and keep the momentum going without having to be directly involved. Now, as we like to do, give you 3 real life examples of successful brand communities. First, Harley Davidson. We find this as like the ultimate brand. So Hog, which I learned, or Harley Owners Group, has built a lifestyle community where members feel like family. Absolutely incredible stories. Highly recommend looking at Harley Davidson. Glossier customers are brand ambassadors, so they've done an incredible job of developing a community-driven approach that's turning everyday customers into micro-influencers. And the last piece here is Tesla. We've seen that they've built a community that essentially sells the brand for them. Tesla, they barely advertise, and yet its fan base generates millions in organic promotion every year and continues growing and continues building that community. Now, what are the common mistakes and how to avoid them within building a brand community? We have 3 that we want to talk about. 1, you need to avoid being too promotional. Your community is not a constant sales pitch. People want to value and engage, and it's not just about marketing. Second, you need to make sure that you're ignoring negative feedback. Unfortunately, community means listening. So even to the hard conversations, this is where if you do what I just did and ignore negative feedback, you need to make sure that you're open to negative feedback, because addressing issues openly and transparently are going to build a much better community than if you just avoid negative feedback. Now, the third element of this is if you are not staying engaged enough, you can lose a lot of community members. So obviously we know starting a community is easy, but maintaining it is actually the hard part. So we recommend show up consistently. Now, as we're ending this episode about why every brand needs a community, we have 4 key takeaways that we want to leave with you. 1, a strong brand community builds long-term loyalty and advocacy. 2, people want to feel connected. Your brand can be the bridge. 3, the best communities offer value just beyond just products. And 4, consistency, engagement, and a shared mission create lasting connections. So building a community isn't about making a quick sale. It's about creating a movement and momentum that lasts. I'm curious, what's a brand community that you're a part of and love? Let me know in the comments, drop them down, and subscribe for more marketing insights on building brand loyalty and engagement. We'd appreciate it and love it. So thanks for tuning into Club Conversations, where marketing makes community and customers become lifelong fans.